I don't think he can hear you when he's getting ready.
Oh, I can hear you. I think I end up
Oh.
echoing people.
I was just saying that if Ari and Caleb show up, can you please let them in?
Absolutely.
I don't think
Thank
he can
you.
hear
That's a squeaky
What?
chair, Ethan.
Yeah, I got to get the oil out, huh? It's, you know, the worst thing is these earbuds that I have are like they're for like music and audio, but they pick up all the ambient noise. So like if I go and run the water faucet, people are like, so yeah, my squeaky chair will be a participant in the meeting until I get it handled.
An ASR factor.
Mark,
That's right.
Mark Benjamin. You there?
Yeah, he's here, Jeannie.
He's
I think
muted.
it's just, I know, I think he wants to be
I'm here.
muted now.
I'm here.
Right, but I'd like the names of the people that are coming and to spell them.
Yeah. Well, this is Mark Benjamin, Benjamin. My two of my business partners, I hope will be joining us. Ari Meal, Arimeil. There's Ari. He's here. And then the last person, and Ari and I are both, excuse me, Camden residents. Caleb Lincoln, Caleb Lincoln, like phonetic, the president, and he is our director of operations, and I'm hoping he will join us as well.
All right. Thank you. Ethan, I don't know if you want to go over this, but I'll just quickly just let everyone know we are live on YouTube right now.
Right.
And this is a public meeting, planning board workshop here on Thursday, February 16th, 2023. There is no decisions tonight other than hopefully setting hearings for March 1st is my hope, if you guys are comfortable with what's being presented tonight. Ethan, you can take it from there. Start with public comments. I don't see anyone in. If anyone else wants to join, I'll let them in.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Camden Planning Board meeting of Thursday, February 16. It's largely a workshop meeting to discuss the Harbor Committee's recommendations for the pier moratorium. And then we'll be looking at an ordinance for marijuana retail stores in Camden, which is something that we had considered back when we did the first wave of stuff, and we thought we'd approach this down the road, and here we are. First order of business today is to find out if we have anybody out there who has any public comments on non-agenda items, and that can even include members of the board.
I don't see any. No one
Seeing
else.
none? Okay, that's great. Has everybody on the board had a chance to review the minutes that were so expertly provided by Jeannie and Shenley's review?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I had two minor things to.
Great.
One is that
read
on the minutes of the pre-app hearing,
Yeah.
it should be reflected that Carter Mann also spoke to both the river and a few other things. And my last name is
The brook, you mean?
yeah, on the I mean he like it mentions Allison speaking, but it doesn't say that he spoke. And then the other item is that my name is misspelled a few times.
Whoa.
There's too many vowels in my name. I apologize, but the U
just
got
sounds
left
like
out
that-
a couple times.
And it sounds like there's just one.
I know.
Chris, so there's no you in planning board.
All right, we'll make those changes. Anyone else have any issues?
If we're doing spelling changes, my name is also misspelled. The last name there, it's not R-A-Y, it's just R-E.
All right.
Oh, and actually, if we're getting on names, it's PATT, and I think it might have just been PAT at points, but it's not a big deal.
That's probably spell check. The other ones I should have gotten. Sorry,
Oh,
guys.
okay, that could be, right. No, that's fine.
No worries.
worries at all.
No worries.
It's okay, Joni.
Ethan, you want to take a motion on those minutes, accept them with those
Yeah,
changes?
I would love to take a motion on those.
So moved.
Roll call vote. John? It's I. Oh, did I get a second? I need a second first.
Oh, second.
Okay, good. John?
Am I a voting member when there's a quorum?
That's a
If
good
so,
question.
For minutes, it doesn't matter.
Sure,
Just jump
yeah.
right in there. Yeah, just go ahead. Chriso?
Aye.
Pat?
I,
With two T's. And Lucia?
Aye.
It's an aye from me. Okay, that's great. So the minutes are approved from the meeting of January 12th and the site walk of January 24th.
Ethan, can I clarify? Ethan, can I just say something about minutes?
You may.
There's been, I know, I'll be quick. There's been a number of meetings and we haven't brought minutes to you folks, and the board's changed a fair amount since when these minutes were created, and we've been creating them based on YouTube, kind of going back and listening. So what we've done is we've just put draft minutes together and put them out there. They are on the town's website, just for everyone's knowledge. Moving forward, we're going to try to get them to you guys to approve. But we do have the record of the actual video of the meeting. So if there's any confusion going forward on anything, we can just go back to the YouTube video. I just wanted to clarify and just let you know that that's where we are.
Great.
We now have a plan to address the minutes and make sure they're done. So we're good now. Okay.
I
Okay.
thought it was really nice to have the minutes to review, actually. That was a nice
Yeah.
change, I think, I saw.
All right. Point taken and understood, Pat.
All right. That's great. So now we get to move on to item 3 on the agenda. We're entering the workshop phase. This is a open to the public hearing. And it is a bit more informal than a planning board meeting where we're going through and taking votes on things. We're just really in a discussion phase to give information back to Jeremy as to whether or not we like the changes that we see proposed, excuse me, and whether we have any concerns. And then at the end, as Jeremy mentioned earlier, we will be looking to set this for a public hearing, I believe, on the 1st of March, and that will require a vote. So just going forward right away, the first workshop item, again, we're amending, and Jeremy will make this clear, we're amending the zoning ordinance only. Some of the things that will come up in these are also handled outside of the zoning ordinance. And so Jeremy will also, I think, give us lay of the land on what is going on in that front as well. So the initial one is the proposal to amend Chapter 290, Article 10A. And this is the Harbor Committee, after having a charge from the Select Board to address the moratorium regarding residential piers, docks, floats, ramps, and other structures in Camden's outer and coastal harbors. They submitted report and recommendations on February 7, 2023. And you've had those documents to review. They recommend some changes to the amendments to the harbor ordinance, and to ensure that their ordinance and our ordinance are in line. We need to also amend ours, and that's what Jeremy's going to lay out for us, and you've probably already reviewed. So Jeremy, at this point, I'm happy to turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you. Ethan, you couldn't have said it any better than you did. That is what this is. So as you know, and I don't think a few of you, 3 of you were on the board when you approved the pier out on Bayview for the Shermans last year. And at that time, the Rixon Pier got approved on Harbor Road shortly before that. Went through the Harbor Committee, the Planning Board, and then the Select Board. And then the Select Board had questioning the impact of harbors or piers on the harbor. So they put forward, asked me to draft a moratorium ordinance that went to voters last June. And that kind of stopped the Sherman Pier, which is out on Outer Bayview in the coastal harbor, from being reviewed any further because you need that select board approval. So the town vote did pass to put a moratorium in place on piers. The select board then, it took a little bit of time, but then did put together tasked the Harbor Committee with addressing the moratorium's concerns, because in a moratorium, there's a number of things that a municipality must find in order to enact one. So the Harbor Committee addressed those concerns and reviewed the ordinance based on the number of items that were listed in the moratorium. And I guess I can let me share my screen if I can. Probably easier than listening to me talk. Plain word packet, share. Can you see my screen?
Mhm.
Yeah, perfect.
Yep.
All right. And we can see some of each other, right? So I was going to go to the moratorium ordinance. Just really quick. It's down in here. I probably can get there easier, but I'll just scroll. Sorry for your eyes. Don't watch it. So there are a number of these issues that the municipality found, voters approved, that for whatever reason, obviously the reasons are detailed in the moratorium. We needed to address these issues. The Select Board tasked the Harbor Committee with doing it. They held many meetings on this. They talked about every issue. They focused on. I hope you read the report that they put together. They focused mostly on, and it's listed in here, the concerns noted in the moratorium were seen to fall under the following 4 categories: density of piers, that's the number of piers in an area, habitat, public access, climate change, and sea level rise. And those were the issues that the Harbor Committee tackled. And after going through this process, they spent a lot of time on it. I don't think they felt that the density of the piers that could be built was an issue based on separation requirements from one pier to another pier. It led to, I think it was 4 piers that were available to be built in the outer harbor, I think is what it came out to, left in the outer harbor. And when it looked at habitat, the Harbor Committee felt that the review that's required from the Army Corps' perspective, Army Corps of Engineers and the Maine Department of Environmental Protection was adequate to address the habitat issues. They're the experts that permit these things regularly, whether it's in Camden or Portland or Bar Harbor. I mean, they permit them regularly. And there's criteria that they need to follow under federal and state law. And the Harbor Committee didn't feel it was appropriate or warranted to have another layer of that type of review at the town level. That said, the Harbor Committee could always ask for, and when you guys are reviewing some project, you could always ask for under the current ordinance for some information on that issue, and it can be provided if you deem it necessary. So they didn't felt that was an issue. And what was the other? Public access. Now, public access, was an interesting one. They didn't really tackle that. There's some comments in here on it. People have a right to fish, hunt, and navigate the waters. So people do have a right, if you can get to it, be out there at low tide or even higher tide and wash, and just to be fishing and navigating and those kinds of things that are allowed. But the public doesn't have necessarily a right to be out in some of this area until you get out beyond low tide, when it becomes public property. So they didn't feel it was a real concern. I don't remember off the top of my head how they addressed it. But they didn't address that. The sea level rise and climate change, they felt that that was a pretty significant issue. I think that was the issue that they felt was most needed to be addressed. So what they've proposed is going from, oh, Ethan, should I stop sharing my screen? Is it weird for you guys to see it this way or do this way? I don't know.
Oh, no, this is good.
Okay. What they proposed, and I was just going to go back to the ordinance where it was. They proposed to go from, in the outer harbor, to go from 6 feet height from normal high water for your walkway, top of the walkway, to 8 feet. So they're giving 2 more feet of area and of height above that high water. And then they also said that we need to, as part of the approval, the pier actually needs to be designed and constructed in a manner that allows it to be raised and or structurally altered in the future to mitigate the increased adverse impacts of sea level rise or storm surge. I think we saw that impact a couple of piers in town during that big storm over Christmas. And so, you know, I think moving forward, this is probably a very good proposal that they drafted. Another thing that in the outer harbor, so we have the inner harbor and then the outer harbor. I think everyone knows where that is. The inner harbor is like the throated area of the harbor. I can find the map here if you'd like. But then it opens up Sherman's Cove out to the island. That's all the outer harbor where we see the boats moored. The coastal harbor is out beyond the island, Curtis Island, and then along the actual coast of Camden, beyond the actual what we consider the harbor. That's called the coastal harbor. The height from normal high water out there is 10 feet in the existing ordinance, and they didn't feel like they needed to be that needed to be tweaked at all. But again, the pier would need to be designed and constructed in a manner that allows it to be raised. One of their other issues, if you remember in the moratorium, it talked about, it wasn't just piers. This was piers, docks, floats, ramps, all of those things that they wanted to look at. The Harbor Committee looked at them, and there was kind of a permitting and review that wasn't getting done. And these are on these things, not just your standard float that's moored out in the harbor, that might be out in front of someone's property, or we have floats, the town has floats. These are land attached floats that for all practical purposes kind of serve the same function as a pier. It's not obviously structural like that. And it goes up and down with the tide. And it's not a significant impact on the environment per se, but they did say they felt that those should be regulated. And there were a couple that were permitted, I think maybe just one built in Sherman's Cove. And the select board did have some concerns how that was reviewed and handled permitting wise. Again, it's not really addressed in the ordinance. And everyone has a right to have a mooring, and this was providing someone access to their mooring. So what we did was defined something called the land attached floats. And those are, it's defined as a system consisting of a ramp with an attached location on land or real property which connects to and or serves as access to a moored float in the outer or coastal harbor. That now will be reviewed just like you guys reviewed piers in the past. That now gets a permit from us. It gets site plan approval from you folks. It gets Harbor Committee review as well. And there was some questions about process that the select board had. There was kind of it's not exactly crystal clear on the process that plays out, whether the planning board reviews first or the select board reviews first. And then there's also been some questions on whether or not the select board should even have an input on it based on this. They're doing the same exact review that the Harbor Committee does or the Planning Board does. They review the same kind of criteria. So to go through 3 different boards, 1 for recommendation and 2 for approvals using the same standards is it's odd. I've researched up and down the coast of Maine, can't find any municipality that does it this way. So we are working on some changes, but that wouldn't be in the shoreline zoning section. That would be over in the harbor ordinance. That's about it. So these ordinance amendments, that's what they developed, that they're going to the select board next Tuesday. Again, in order to get things to voters in June. What's going to select board next Tuesday is whether or not they're having a hearing on to extend the moratorium. The moratorium expires March 8th, I believe, or 7th. And it needs to be extended. If it doesn't get extended by March 7th or 8th, the moratorium goes away. And then people can submit again for peers using the existing ordinance. So it's going to them for a hearing on Tuesday. It's my hope that they accept the Harbor Committee's recommendations. I mean, they were tasked with doing it by them. They had many, many meetings that were public and open. They're on Zoom. They were, they're out there. And not much public comment came in at all, really. I don't think any public comment, to be honest. There was somebody who, and I think it's included in their packet, but that was it. So it's my hope they move it forward. Their changes, they move it forward. The hope is that, and the reason you're hearing it before them really talking about it is because the timing needed to get zoning amendments in place for June. Their process is much different. It's through the Harbor Committee. It's a very quick process. It doesn't have to have a hearing with you and then a hearing with them. It just has a hearing with them. So that's what's moving forward. If anyone has any questions on it, let me know. I don't know if I explained it good enough for you or well enough.
I think so, Jeremy. Thank you. I think you can probably stop showing your screen now for
All right,
the
perfect.
moment. We can see other people's faces and I can see hands raised. First, I would like to extend gratitude to the Harbor Committee for their thorough work. I did attend one of their meetings and then also was provided an opportunity to review and comment on some of their stuff. And I agree with Jeremy, and I know it's outside of the scope of this one, but when I went to the one workshop that I went to with the select board, I commented that I thought the triad review was unique and unnecessary. It's duplicative. Basically, if the planning board approves, we're applying the facts to the ordinance. And then to go from that and have the select board have a further review, what are they going to do? Are they going to reject the planning board's application of the facts of the ordinance? It just makes no sense. And I was interested to learn from Jeremy that nobody else in Maine really does that. So I'm not sure what the utility of that is. It's like if we did a whole subdivision ordinance and we spent our whole time, or a subdivision application, and we did our whole time reviewing it and did all of our work, and then we sent it to the select board and said, you have to now approve this. It doesn't make sense. Now, when we're revising an ordinance, yes, of course it makes sense. We revise a zoning ordinance, we provide suggestions, and then we approve it, and then we send it to the select board before it goes to the voters. That's how the process works. So I just wanted to echo Jeremy's concerns there. But also, I think the city attorney has the same concern that there is sort of a superfluous second review by the select board that I think could be eliminated and should be. As Jeremy said, that's going to be handled outside of this ordinance. This is just the zoning ordinance. So I just wanted to put that on the record for my own purposes. Second, for my purposes, I question the need for these peers at all. I think that they're privately owned. I don't think that I'm out in the water quite a bit, and I don't see them getting a lot of use. It seems like a luxury that a few people are able to avail themselves of. That's not really before us here. I'm putting this on the record again from my personal perspective. But it is something that we could, as a board, talk about. But what we're looking at really is the Harbor Committee did a lot of work They put a lot of thought into this, and what they propose, if we're going forward with, extending the moratorium, of course, and then adjusting the ordinance to address certain issues like sea level rise, bringing in the land attached floats and things like that. I think they've done a good job, and I do actually support what they've done if that's the direction that we as a board choose to go. Does anybody else have any input or questions for Jeremy, Chriso?
Yeah, I have a couple. I mean, on the whole, I echo what you just said about the work that the Harbor Committee did to get through this. And really, I watched a couple of them, and I mean, it is a little bit, to your point, I mean, it is a little bit of barn door after the cow. We've got 4 left that we could potentially see happen. But I had a couple quick questions about any new piers that are built. And a lot of them, like most of the way they're built, is that they're on granite footings, and then the wooden structure is pinned to that granite. So they're already, most of them are being built in a way that could be raised and another tier of granite. Would that, and that's not, that might happen in 20 or 40 years. Would they have to come back and would the property owner have to come back and
To
get
go up 2
approval
more feet.
yeah.
I think the way the ordinance reads is you're allowed to do repairs and maintenance. So that's a question. That's a very good question, Chriso. We haven't, that didn't come up. And I think I will talk to the town attorney about seeing if we can try to clarify that in some way.
Because I'm just thinking that there are several, like, I mean, I still think of it as the Dr. Miller house, but the house next to the yacht club, who completely lost their pier during the storm, they're presumably going to rebuild. If this goes through and they can go up 2 feet higher than they were, that's a design change on their dock. I guarantee you there's several dock owners who have the means and would like to go higher.
Yeah. So that one would need to come to the board and come to the Harbor Committee brand new, because it's not, it's definitely a new pier. If you've got an existing pier.
Well, the one next to the yacht club is an existing pier that they are rebuilding.
It's gone.
But the granite's still there.
Yeah, well,
It's the
It's
wood.
it's a really good question.
I've told them already that they don't get to rebuild as it was, and then they need to go through the process. And right now the moratorium's in place. So that one will go to the Harbor Committee and, and the planning board from my perspective. If someone's got an existing pier that's standing, like actually still there, besides the granite, the whole thing's still there, and they're saying, boy, we built it to, give us the ability to, we went up to 8 feet, one of those 4 that's available, right? That can be built, or one of the existing ones, and say we can go up to 8 feet, and we're getting hammered at 8 feet or at 6 feet and want to go to 8. I think we'll probably, if there's no impact or change to the footprint,
Right.
or how it's connected to the land, or the change of length, which is probably not likely, based on the, how the tide works and how the height goes. So it's possible someone could probably just permit a couple more granite slabs in there. But if they're making a substantial change beyond what we would consider maintenance, then it would go through the review process.
Yeah, so I agree with Chriso. We need an answer to that question.
Will do.
And thank you, Chriso, for bringing that up. And I just want to reflect, Jeremy, back to the position. So again, it's not my job to be the code enforcement officer, but you're suggesting that someone has a pier destroyed. Were they at 6 feet?
Jeannie mentioned actually the other day that we don't even think this actually technically a pier. As much as I think everyone thinks it's a pier. Jeannie mentioned that. I didn't get a chance to research it. That one's been there a long time, so I'd have to do a little
So it may have
digging.
been just a grandfathered old thingy.
Well, it was, I can tell, I mean, you can go back and look at the coverage of when that house got approved.
Yeah,
And but there is a granite structure
Yeah.
that had a
When,
wooden
when was it approved, Chriso?
early 90s, I think,
Okay,
is when
good.
that whole house got turned into a house and built.
yeah,
But there is a granite structure that has had a walkway, and then a float.
yeah.
So
Well, the walkway's
Uh-huh.
gone.
right, the walk. Oh, I saw it.
So
But
that one I think we can handle pretty easily. And they need review again.
Yeah.
But
But
changing
yeah,
an
I mean, I was
existing,
just, so then my other question is with the land attached floats,
yeah.
does that apply to saltwater only, or does that also apply to anyone on a pond, lake, or stream in town?
No, it applies only to these floats. We do not regulate floats out on the lakes.
Because as I read it, I'm not seeing where it specifies that it doesn't apply.
Well, it's a harbor ordinance.
Yes. We have, I think that, it's certainly the Harbor Committee is, and this moratorium and this ordinance is for it's for the harbor. It's not for McGuntacook or Hosmer Pond. But if you want a clarification in there somehow, I can make sure that we were covered. I think you're covered in the ordinance itself, the harbor ordinance.
Okay.
I agree.
I think Chriso's right. The pier at Dr. Miller's house was not considered a pier. It was more like a land attached float with a ramp supported
I
by
think-
granite and then to a float.
I think that was a pier, but I'd call it a
Yeah.
pier.
Well, DEP
Yeah.
didn't call it a pier.
Yeah, and that was in the
Well,
90s.
That
But
was
also
many
because
years
it
ago.
that one is attached to the house, so it's a weird, like it comes off their deck.
Yep.
That's why I included real property in the definition of a land attached float.
Yeah.
Anyone else got any issues or concerns with those? Pat?
Yeah, Pat's got her hand up.
Yeah, I just had one, and this is where the piers may be designed in a way that allows them to be raised or structurally reinforced. I think my question here was, it sounds like it's probably pretty limited as to what you can do for an existing structure. And there's minimal new piers, it sounds like, that can occur, but I guess one of my concerns was that there wasn't any odd or awkward designs that went on, which I'm thinking most likely it would have, well, I'm not sure, would it have to come before the board if it was an amendment to an existing pier? But new piers, would come through us, but the wording of it just made me wonder about that, having an odd or awkward design but I mean, I'm thinking the planning process would take care of that, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you mean by weird or awkward design. I know anything's possible out there, right? With enough engineering and cubic dollars, but I mean, I don't think, I think the standard practice for constructing these piers is pretty consistent across the board on how they're constructed in the state of Maine now, and most of them are using granite rock to do it as opposed to piles, or some sort of, other structural, which are very limited in how you can go up. I think they've run that into that in Booth Bay Harbor right now, or in Booth Bay. So I don't know what you're referring to necessarily, Pat, but I think.
I think Pat's right. Sorry to interrupt, but I think Pat's, reasonably in place here to, we don't know what building materials will be utilized in the next 20 years. And this ordinance is a forward-looking ordinance. We're not looking to amend it again in 5 years. But I think you're right. Your instincts are right, Pat, that that can come through in the review process and the design criteria. I think Jeremy's absolutely right that, most likely they're just going to drop chunks of granite down and then do it like they're doing it. But who knows what the future holds and whether they're going to throw some carbon fiber, structure looking thing or something out there. but at that point, I think we could address it in the review process, because there is a, there is included in that review an aesthetic portion, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I was hoping would happen. I mean, for a new structure that is also being designed in a way that allows the structure to be raised or structurally reinforced for climate.
And so what does the board feel about the 2-foot raising? I was curious. So, Jeremy, I honestly don't know the one that referenced by Chriso. Do we not know the height of that pier and other piers at 6 feet? And does the board feel that? And I know the Harbor Committee gave a lot of discussion to this, but how confident are we that 2 feet is enough? Is that something we want to look at? Again, it could be amended again down the road, but call me a skeptic, but I think the 2 foot in 50 years or whatever they're using is an optimistic goal or whatever. And I think we've seen failures across the globe, and we've seen these huge storm events. I'm willing to warrant that in the next 20 years, 2 feet will seem like we went too low. But go ahead, Chriso.
Well, yeah, I mean, I will just say that we rebuilt the dock in Cushing last year, and when talking with Proc, their recommendation is to go 3 feet. And the challenge is that we're looking at the outer harbor, which is where there's more storm surge.
Right.
So, that storm that we had at Christmas, it was a 2 foot above normal high tide. So it was a 12-foot high tide with a good 2 or 3 foot storm surge on top of it.
So like 4 feet.
What we saw with the dock that was approved on Harbor Lane last year was that the 6 feet basically meant, as I recall, basically the bottom of the stringers was about half a foot above mean high water, or relatively close. So what we're gaining is 2 feet up, which is sufficient. Would it be nice to see more? I kind of think yes. I think 4 would be, like a maximum of 4 would be fine, but I don't want to second guess all of the conversations that the Harbor Committee had.
Right, and there is a
But to
balancing
me-
act in here. Oh, go ahead. I want to let you finish.
No, I mean, I just think we're getting higher and higher big weather. The Miller House was probably 4 feet above. I mean, it was
Is that what you
flooding
think?
all the time. I mean, all of the inner harbor is going to have some factor of going up. But if you look at the seawall at the yacht club, like all of those things are now underwater when these weather events happen, and they're happening more. So I just feel like allowing, obviously not 15 or 20 feet above sea level, but the more we allow some leeway for docks, the better. But again, and I see that more retroactively for allowing people who have existing piers to go up based on their location.
Mm-hmm. And then there's, as I was just interjecting, I see you, John, I'll get to you in a second, the balancing act between the aesthetic of it, as you said, you don't want to go 15 feet, but then you've got the navigation aspect. If you go up a little bit, then people can sort of paddle underneath them more readily at high tide. So I'm open to hearing suggestions. John, go ahead.
I have a question and then maybe 2 comments. One is sort of a technical question, that the phrase cover pier height that is moving from 6 to 8 feet. Am I correct in understanding that's the platform that people would walk on, the top of it? Okay. All right. I appreciate the comments from Chriso and Ethan, but I'm inclined to defer to the Harbor Committee in that regard. And then as a comment, I had read the letter from the kayaker that said he liked kayaking under the piers, and there's nothing in this language that guarantees that he'd be able to kayak below these piers. So in a sense, I'm comfortable with the recommendation to raise the height from 6 to 8 feet. And if it didn't come up the works, I'd throw in a little bit of language that would serve to guarantee that there's still a free flow of transportation below them.
Yeah, and that's a good point, John. I think that it's noteworthy though that as Jeremy pointed out at the beginning, navigation and fishery, and there's one other. Those are guaranteed rights to the public under the, what is it called, the
Yeah.
the
Sure,
Commonwealth.
and I appreciate that that's the state requirement, but there's nothing in the local code that helps support that. So
Okay. Yep.
that a kayaker had to duck going underneath the pier, argument.
Right, and that gets to my whole point is like, do we want to allow more, 4 more of these anyway? When that's the public access issue, which Jeremy said really wasn't really strongly addressed. But I digress because I'm on a soapbox. Lucia, I think I saw you put your hand up. No? Okay, go ahead. Pat?
I was just gonna say that now that you guys are bringing it up, that had been my thought too. I'm thinking, does 2 feet really do that much at this point in time? I was thinking it would be nice if it was, if there were more feet they were suggesting to raise it by.
And I wonder, Jeremy, we don't want to overcomplicate this. Is this the kind of thing that we should just sort of say, well, we've got 20 years to figure that out. If in 15 years it's already at 2 feet, then we can go back and amend the ordinance. I mean, 15 years for us is a long time. None of us will be on this board as far as I'm concerned. Maybe. I mean, that would be epic, but we may all be not beyond the grave, but we'll be doing something else most likely. And I'm not trying to kick a can down the road, but I don't know. Does it overcomplicate it, Jeremy, in your opinion, to start messing with the height that was recommended by the Harbor Committee, or is it pretty pro forma to just go forward and say, hey, they recommended 2, planning board recommends 4, your call?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think this is one of those things that if we start to see 2 feet's not enough, we just go through the process and change it. Again, I mean, this idea that ordinances are static in time and should always be the same, I think that's one thing that, is kind of plagued Camden a little bit, to be honest with you. We haven't been, I think, active enough to tweak our ordinances, for the community today and for what the issues we're facing. So, I mean, I think keeping this in place is fine, and moving it forward like this doesn't prohibit us from coming back 5 years from now and saying, we really need to look at it differently. I will say, the storm over Christmas has changed, I think, a fair amount of attitude in town, and brought this issue to the forefront of storm surge and sea level rise. There was some questions came back up about the breakwater that was proposed, that the Army Corps was looking to see if the town would work with them on. That's come up again, and now I'm in the process of applying for grants for repairing the public landing. We had significant damage at the landing this year from that event. I mean, the yacht club, certainly, the steamboat landing got hammered. You couldn't put a boat in there today, really. Certain people could, but probably most of us can't. And then Harbor Park got hit pretty hard. Obviously, Harbor Park's land, right? There's a small retaining wall and some park benches, but it's not significant infrastructure like we have at the landing or at the yacht club, which is town property.
Yeah.
Or at Steamboat Landing. So in talking with people on this issue, you know, the town's moving forward. We're going to be applying for some grant funds to do some assessments of those 4 properties, the public landing, the yacht club, Steamboat Landing, and the Harbor Park, to give us some ideas how we can address that long term. But at the same time, we've got to think beyond just public property. There's so much other, you know, privately held land that's on the harbor,
Yeah.
inner harbor and outer harbor, that are running into similar issues. So we're going to try to establish kind of a working group, if you will, to come up with kind of a harbor plan, you know, comprehensive plan for the harbor, not just town property, but, you know, so I think that's all going to play out. It's going to play out over the course of many years, to be honest with you. I mean, for us to get funding to do a big fix at the public landing, which we desperately need, that fix is probably 4 to 5 years out, like actually being built.
Yeah. Okay, Jeremy,
So-
can I just steer this? I want to get to Lucia.
Yeah.
She has her hand up. Go ahead, Lucia.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if you called on me earlier. I was having a little bit of sound
No, it's
problem.
fine. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I just needed some clarification. So the 6 to 8 feet is only in the outer harbor, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And then John had the same question I had, is where that is measured to. And then I think it's great that you look at the ordinance as needed rather than try and do a one fix now and saying, you know, has to be up to 10 feet or allowing a certain amount of feet. But it should be continually reviewed as needed.
I look
Thank
at
you,
these
Lucia.
ordinances as living documents. I mean, they need
Yeah.
to be living.
And they are, yeah. The one thing I had a question on, following up on Lucia's point, though, could we put in there that they should be designed to be able to be raised more than 2 feet while not raising the height limit?
Well, that's what they said.
Is that how it's written?
Allows that, piers shall be designed and constructed in a manner that allows them to be raised and or structurally reinforced in the future.
So even if you're building a brand new pier at 8 feet, you still have to design it to go higher in the future. And
Yeah,
so
that's good. Thank you, Chriso. That covers it for me. Yeah. Anyone else have anything they want to question, raise? Go ahead, Lucia.
And I'm sorry, I have one more question. How old is the oldest pier out there? Do we know how long these things have a longevity of?
I don't.
Do we have a 50-year-old pier out there?
Yeah, we do. I mean, even just things like what's supporting Fresh Restaurant, which used to be Sharp's Wharf, the underpinnings of that structure that all of that is sitting on, that wharf that goes down to the town landing is at least 50 years old. The condos next to the waterfront were put in mid-80s. That's like the last major, other than Wayfarer. That's probably the last.
They're routinely flooding now.
Right, but that was like the last major waterfront infrastructure project in the inner harbor, and obviously never should have been approved as it is, but that's a whole nother.
Motion to appoint Chriso, our local historian. He's doing
Well,
great.
that's what you get when you grow up in the town.
I love it. I really love all the background.
You know, and that was, I mean, when that house that we were talking about happened, you know, that was sort of the same level of why did that get
built?
And we weren't really talking about sea level rise that.
Yeah. Well, that's
I
not
just got
surprising considering the 2017 town plan the comp plan doesn't even mention sea level rise.
But Lucia, sorry, go ahead, Jeremy.
I was just going to make some comments. I got some comments from somebody. Jim Bennett is his name. He is with the yacht club. There's a environmental, he's an engineer, worked on a lot of marine projects. And And he's been helping me a little bit on some of this stuff. He just reminded me that the Inner Harbor is zone AE, and it's not subject to the storm waves, but the Outer Harbor is a velocity zone. So projects need to withstand storm waves out there when they're built. Yacht Club, Lyman Moore, Steamboat Landing are in that velocity zone. The town dock is in the AE, so it's not subject to those storm waves. But he did say there's definitely a cost of building higher. Just throwing that out there. He sent me a presentation that he did recently and mentioned that a number of these questions on height for structures would be reduced if the breakwater is implemented, reduces the height requirement by as much as half the water depth at the Inner Harbor if there was a breakwater.
Okay.
So just putting that out there. And I think these are kind of the comments that information we're compiling and gathering so that we can actually, make this work long-term for the harbor and for Camden. I mean, I think everyone knows the harbor is our primary economic driver. And it's significant to this town. So we're not really taking it lightly. And I think we're considering all of these things. And I think what these changes are very minor, but there's all this other stuff happening. And that's why I just am pointing out kind of what Lucia kind of supported is that this is a living document that's going to change, and it has to, because our situations are going to change over time.
Right. Okay. I want to get to John here. John, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to point out, we're talking about a maximum limit, right? So even under this changed ordinance, a property owner might build a pier that doesn't go to the maximum.
And do you support that?
Well, I guess I'm okay with that. If they have to deal with the mess, if they're too low.
Yeah, I mean, the only issue that I would raise with that, and I appreciate you bringing it up, is the navigation aspect, right? So if we could put a minimum on it of 6 and give them a maximum of 8. Go ahead, Chriso.
I just think that, even before it comes to our zoning, Army Corps of Engineer probably isn't going to approve a design that has, no one's going to build a dock that's below high tide. Right. So right. I just feel like, by the time it gets to us, it's, again, when we look at the multiple levels of approval for a pier, before they even come to the town, they're going to DEP and Army Corps, and Army Corps is going to look at something like that and say, no, you're building it at high tide. That's not gonna, and unless they're using, Joe Schmo Cowboy Dock Company, there's no dock builders who are going to build them that way either. And right. Especially, again, the thing that I just keep coming back to is we're talking about Outer Harbor and Coastal Harbor. Like, these are the most exposed sections of Camden Harbor.
Yeah.
And I think anybody who's going to build a dock out there is going to do it rugged and.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, just so you know, really quick, I did a memo for the select board. I don't think people have seen it yet, but in there I gave them some options for this moratorium. One of those options is that they extend the moratorium. One option is to continue it. One is to continue it just for the Outer Harbor and not anymore for the coastal, because the coastal only change proposed in the coastal is to require them that they're designed and constructed in a manner to be raised in the future. They're allowed to be at 10 feet. The one that we have, it takes a lot to build a pier in the coastal harbor. It's a significant structure, significant dollars. And they're building them already. The one that you approved out on Bayview, on Outer Bayview, is designed to go up in the future.
Yeah.
So I'm just pointing that out. I think, it's, yeah. I don't know.
Right.
Every way you want to go on this.
Yeah. So I want to take. I know this isn't a formal hearing, Jeremy, but I'm going to take a roll call vote on my own personal pet project. And you know, planning board, you know, you all are independent voters, and I'm not pressuring you at all to you know, vote with me. But I would like to propose that as a board, we go ahead and propose to the select board that they not allow any new piers. Period, flat. So I will take a straw poll vote on that one. And anyone in favor of my proposal, please so indicate by raising your hand.
Wait, they don't allow any more piers until when?
Period.
Ever.
Oh, period.
Yeah, I don't think they're necessary. I think they're an eyesore. I think they obstruct the public right of way. I think that they are rarely used. I don't see boats pulling up to them. I don't see the purpose of them other than I can have it, and I don't like them. So that's just me. And I recognize that that's, you know, just me, but it is where I stand on it. So I wanted to just see if there's any support from the board.
Well,
Let me
ask this. There are the ability to build 4 more piers, we're saying, right?
Yeah.
And that's
In the outer harbor.
in the
That's
outer
just the outer harbor, but you've got inner harbor, you've got, you know, you've got coastal harbor.
Oh, there's no room for any more in the inner harbor.
Are there
Correct.
none? None? Okay.
Yeah, I
none.
think we're looking, my understanding is that we have a total of 4 potential piers could be built in Camden Harbor.
So that would include
The
the
outer
coastal
harbor,
and the
yes.
outer
The
harbor.
outer harbor, but then there's coastal, which you said is expensive, but they could be built, right? Yeah, so there's plenty that can be built out there. I think they should be done away with altogether, but I'm a person who rows in the harbor in Belfast, and I see them. I use them as landmarks to know how far I have to row to get back, which has some utility, but I just think that they are, I never see any boats using them. I never see anything. It just seemed like a luxury that is not actually used. And I'm not speaking from any, you know, empirical evidence on this, other than my own observation. But that's something that I would love to, you know, I'm on the record. The select board will probably get notice that I suggested not doing it at all, not allowing any more at all, but I was just curious if the board had any support as a board to go with that. So again, I will just ask if anybody wants to raise hands for that proposal. And I don't see any. Okay, that's great. So moving on then, I do want to go ahead and recommend myself that we adapt the ordinance as drafted by Jeremy to match the harbor ordinance, or adopt, sorry. I think it's sufficient. I like the Lucia and Jeremy's solution that this is a fluid document, and we can go ahead down the road and address, you know, if in 10 years we see sea level rise getting to 2 feet, then we can go ahead and address and raise it again, with the idea that it's already built in there that these structures need to be designed to be raised. I'm willing to, unless there's further discussion on anything, I'm willing to entertain a motion along those lines.
Do we need a motion or?
We just. are
Not
scheduling
really,
a public
yeah,
hearing.
yeah, we're just giving feedback, that's right, yeah. So thank you for that. Anyone else have anything they want to say regarding the pier
You
ordinance?
do
We've got
need
some
a
people
motion.
with.
If,
We
'cause you're
do?
gonna- Yes, you're gonna vote to send it to public hearing. You
Right.
need
Yeah,
specific ordinance reference, date, time, and location.
got it.
You
And
you can say as laid out in the agenda, Ethan, is fine, and it would be for March 1st at 5 o'clock.
don't speak to me, speak to my motion people.
So I would do it in one package.
Well, I was gonna say, aren't we gonna do both of these? So,
Yeah, I thought that we would do it at the end. That's what I was wondering. Jeannie, can we do them all together?
No,
Nope, thank you.
all right, then I'll make a motion that we set a hearing for this amendment of March 1st at 5 PM. And that's Wednesday, not the Thursday?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, I second.
We have a motion and a second for putting the ordinance amendments as indicated in the agenda for public hearing on Wednesday, March 1st. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye, so aye. Okay, it's unanimous. Jeannie, please note that and go ahead and put that on the calendar for March 1st.
All right. Thank you, Ethan.
All right. Thank you to, that closes that portion, and thank you to our other guests who have waited patiently while
Endured.
it's a great process. I'm sure you are not subscribers to our YouTube channel, but you really should be because it's lively. And we welcome you guys here, and we'll move on to the second portion of the workshop, and I'll pull that up just for my own benefit. This is a proposal from Mark Benjamin to amend Chapter 3 definitions in our code to define marijuana retail store and Chapter 8 district regulations to add marijuana retail as a permitted use in the Transitional Harbor Business District, BTH, and the Downtown Business District, B1. And the proposed language is included in your packet. I will just note because we've had significant turnover on the board. When we went through the initial marijuana ordinance approval, where we allowed for growing, et cetera, and we put some restrictions on that, but also, allowed it in many places. It was definitely contemplated by the board that we would then move to this. But we also felt that it was good to take the temperature of the town of Camden and see how supportive or how much resistance there was to allowing growing of marijuana and those sorts of things. I think we've all seen that there's significant benefit to the tax rolls in the state, and that these shops are not blights on the neighborhood as was maybe considered when people first looked at these ordinances. So we were definitely looking at the time, and I don't remember if any of you, even Chriso, were you on the board back then?
I was not, but I remember it.
Yeah, so really it's just me, I guess, that's still hanging on, but we definitely considered that we did not include the retail because we wanted to take the temperature, but we as a board were generally in favor of it, and thought that we would move on this down the road, and now we're being brought this proposal. So at this point, Jeremy, I'll give you a chance to just take the lead and make a quick blurb, and then introduce Mark, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I think that's a good setup for this, Ethan. Thank you. There was some history here. Just so everyone knows how adult use works, and actually medical storefronts, you got to opt in and in the state of Maine. And the only way to do that is to codify allowing certain facilities. We did that with cultivation, like Ethan said. We haven't done it with adult use retail. In order to do that, we need to tweak our ordinance a little bit. Mark Benjamin's here. He has reached out to the town. He wanted to propose this amendment. There's a public process. He's got the right to propose this. And he's drafted an ordinance changes that he thinks is appropriate. I've tweaked it a little bit in the last couple of days, so it gets codified appropriately and everything gets amended right. Definitions get tweaked. If we have existing definitions, they get tweaked in order to facilitate his proposal. So I'm very familiar with regulating these facilities. I've been involved in other municipalities on regulating these. I did speak to the police chief today about whether or not he had any concerns. He did not have any concerns. He said similar to how I kind of have thought about these. It's a legal product in the state of Maine. It's a retail shop. If a municipality wants to allow them, then the community should allow them. There is a regulatory process. You have to get permits and licenses from the state. Then you've got to get conditional approval from the state. And then you got to submit to the municipality. The municipality needs to send paperwork back to the state and say they're good to go. And then they get their license. And there's a whole lot of security and all that stuff that, that they have to comply with under state law. We have roped a lot of that stuff into our marijuana process or licensing ordinance. So that's addressed on that side for cultivation. We also addressed some of that in our special exception requirements. But for the most part, this is an adult use retail shop. We did not, and I think Mark's not proposing it to be a special exception or anything like that, because it is a retail store. These products that Mark will speak to and Ari are, they're sealed, they're contained, it's a regulated product. You can't walk into a store and there's not open jars of flour or whatever around. It's very much regulated. And so they've got to make sure they're compliant with the state. They have to get their permits through us, and then they've got to get through the code office, and then they have to get their license from the select board before they open. And that goes through a review that the police chief does, the fire chief does, the code officer does, I do. That's what happens to all marijuana facilities in town. So if you do move this forward, we will need to tweak the marijuana licensing piece a little bit, but that's not you guys, that's the select board. I'll let Mark take it from there and explain what he drafted, and then I could chime in some changes. And Mark, maybe after you chat and Ari, I can bring up the most recent draft that I sent to everyone, because I think that's probably the working document we should work from moving forward. And in order to get this similar to the other ordinance to voters for June, we really need to get a hearing scheduled. I'm hoping if you are all supportive of this, would be for March 1st as well. Reason behind that, and letting some guy Craig enter the room, just so you know. In order to get to voters in June, it's got to go to the select board, and we have to have all that done by March 22nd or something. So I felt like March 1st is really the time to get this done, especially with a subdivision review preliminary on March 15th.
Okay.
So Mark, take
Okay.
it from there.
Yeah,
and
just a quick reminder, Mark, just please state your full name, any spelling necessary, and then your place of residence, and then you're free to go ahead with your presentation.
You bet. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Jeremy. And first of all, thank you to the planning board for listening to us, and thank you for your work on the planning board. I know how important it is to our town, and I very much appreciate your time, you volunteering your time. I'm Mark Benjamin, Mark with a K, and Benjamin, Benjamin. I'm a Camden resident. I live at 10 Union Street, so that's right downtown, basically right across from the Catholic Church. My partners here, Ari Meal. We actually run two businesses together, including Botany. We're 2 of 5 partners in Botany. Ari, also, he's on Curtis Avenue here in Meal, Arimeil. He's on Curtis Avenue. And so we run 2 businesses that employ a bunch of people in the area. Botany, which is our marijuana brand and our marijuana company, has been around for a couple of years. We now have a grow facility, an indoor grow facility, which is located in Hope, Maine. Our first store, if you have not seen, is at 403 Main Street in Rockland. It's been opened in September. It had been open for a year. It's doing very, very well. And our second store will be opening. We rented a place in Belfast. We leased a place in Belfast. If you know Belfast, where the Colonial Theater is, if you can picture the Colonial Theater there in downtown, we're just to the space, just to the right of that. If you're facing it, it used to be Side Country Sports. So that's our second store. We would love to have a place in Camden. Ari and I love Camden. We raise our kids here. We're really into it. We think it would be a great addition to the town. Just in terms of Botany in general, Ethan, you sort of referenced this in terms of the stores. Botany is a very it's a pretty fancy brand. We don't compete on price so much. We are a very, very high quality producer. We're very proud of our product. It is completely organic. All the water is monitored. It's a pristine facility where all this stuff is produced. And we're really proud of the product. And we also pride ourselves on the brand and the customer experience. Ari, I don't know if you have any photos available that you could quickly share of the store while I'm talking, but it is a very.
Can I share my screen now?
You should be able to, Ari.
That's our brand. It is a high quality, very adult, frankly, from a business perspective, somewhat feminine leading brand. If you go inside our store at 403 Main Street in Rockland, I think you'll find it a very comfortable experience. We've also organized the customer experience there to be very adult and very mature, and also to appeal to new people coming into the market, meaning a lot of people are coming to the store that haven't used marijuana in some time and are interested in getting back to it. And we sort of educate them on how that works. And because there's so many options now in terms of this product. For our proposal that we drafted for Camden, we think Camden would be a great place for Camden. We think, frankly, our brand and our store, our beautiful store and our beautiful brand would be great in Camden. We know that in Rockland, we've been received wonderfully by the community there. We think we fit in beautifully. Our neighbors really like us. Frankly, there's a lot of foot traffic that comes down to Botany, including in the off season, where our numbers have been really good this past winter. And people walking down past retail stores is something that other retail stores tend to really appreciate. So that has been another benefit of having a downtown store. We proposed a maximum of 2 stores in the downtown district, only because we thought it sort of matched the tenor and feel of our town. We didn't really want Camden to be overrun with, 6 or 10 marijuana stores in such a small area, but 1 or 2 would provide some nice competition and some options for shoppers. And so, we're a growing company. We're employing more and more people in high paying jobs, and frankly, we're the right brand at the right place at the right time. So we're happy to take any questions you have about Botany, about us, or about our proposal here.
Can I pull up my screen just so everyone can see what we're talking about?
Absolutely, Jeremy. Thank you, Mark.
Everyone see it?
Mhm.
Yeah. It looks weird for me. I don't know why. Can you see do you see the definitions and all that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, good. All right. So I hope you've looked at what was in the packet. And what I did here, maybe before we ask questions of you, Mark, maybe just go through this down through the amendments, and maybe that could answer some questions. What we did was we had to tweak the definition of marijuana. This is like the head category for definitions. If you look at our terminology section 293.2, you get down to M in our definitions, and marijuana. We lumped a slew of marijuana definitions, adult use cannabis, and into that marijuana definition. And then so we had to tweak that by adding marijuana retail stores. The existing definition is in black. I added the blue in order to facilitate Mark's zoning amendment proposal. This is the definition that he proposed for, this would be a new N, marijuana retail store. And all these, I've been verifying all of these state statutes, making sure they're right. I will say what this does too, it does allow, and I'm glad that Mark included this, the medical retail store as well. Because I think that is something that has been around a lot longer than adult use. The storefront or the caregiver offices or storefronts, if you will, have been around a while, and we haven't had the ability to have those in town. So I'm glad he included that. So You may find that botany may try to open up, but you also might find that a caregiver might want to open up a retail store, which is a different thing than a adult use retail. As a caregiver, from the medical perspective, you get a a prescription or a card that you qualify for medical use, and it's a different environment than the retail store. We did need to, I highlighted this change in marijuana establishment. That's another definition in our marijuana section. Right now, marijuana establishments, as the ordinance allows, currently is only cultivation. But I needed to tweak this a little bit. We planned for this, to be honest with you, Ethan. I think you're right, because we included products manufacturing and testing in marijuana stores in this definition, even though they weren't allowed, and they're still not allowed. We did include that in the definition.
Yeah, that's my recollection.
Yep, in case they did come around. So, however, those facilities, the marijuana products manufacturing facility, cultivation facility, and testing facilities, we said those could only happen as a special exception for a number of reasons. Special exceptions, similar to conditional uses in other municipalities, have a potential impact, larger impact on neighbors, and in a neighborhood, for instance, there might be odors, or there might be, size of the building might be too, pretty large. So when the planning board reviewed cultivation, they felt that they should really be a special exception. And I think that's appropriate, because we allowed outdoor as well as indoor, and even indoor facilities, grow facilities, can have odor issues if they're not managed appropriately. So what this does is this says that marijuana retail stores do not need to be reviewed as a special exception. They're just reviewed by the code office in essence. And then what needs to happen in the district regulation section, we would add a new use. This would be a new permitted use, marijuana retail stores. State law has a setback of 1,000 feet, but allows municipalities to go to 500 feet. Now, I think every single municipality that's allowed retail has gone down to 500 feet. It's a weird thing that the state says 1,000 feet is a setback, but the municipality can go to 500. Well, just make it 500. But they didn't. That's 1,000. So we left ours at 500, I believe, for cultivation, as I recall correctly. And so this requires a setback, and this is consistent with state law. There are certain facilities that they need to be set back from, and we did this with cultivation as well. Childcare facilities, daycare centers, public schools, preschools, etc. We did add in our cultivation, we included Camden Public Library and Harbor Park. This proposal is just for the Camden Public Library lot, the lot itself. And I'll need to include a new parentheses there as I'm editing this. So, and Mark and Ari proposed that the applicant must pay a marijuana business licensing fee of $1,250 to the planning board within 30 days of approval and prior to beginning operations. That is something that will be addressed in the marijuana licensing ordinance. I think that's chapter 158, if I recall correctly, in our code. So I struck that out of his proposal because that's dealt with elsewhere and not really an appropriate planning board issue. I will say that I'm in the process going to voters, hopefully in June, if I can get all the work done, is we're going to consolidate all of the town's business licenses, all of them, into one new chapter. So we're not going to have a separate chapter for marijuana and vitulers and liquor and everything else. It's all going to be in one chapter. So that's where that will be tweaked. Mark proposed the language in red for applicants showing their right, title, and interest and working with the town attorney. And as I mentioned to Mark, we're going to tweak this a little bit and just say that they have to have sufficient right, title, and interest. That is adequate for us. We require that of anyone applying for a permit or a use permit. You have to have sufficient right, title, and interest. Frankly, we could pull this whole section out because you have to have some sort of right title and interest to apply anyway. But might as well keep it in from my perspective. And the applicant was proposing it, and I think it does provide a little bit of assurance that the applicant actually has their their ducks in a row for being in the property that they're proposing to be in. And then one of the other conditions is that it would combine total of 2 marijuana retail stores are permitted in transitional harbor business or the downtown business district. That's what that says. Mark, here's a question. I didn't think about this until now, since we have the definition of retail stores includes caregiver stores. This prohibition on the retail stores, that would limiting them to 2. Would that mean we could have multiple beyond that caregivers? I assume it does. Was that your intent, or should we include caregivers in that number too?
That's a good question.
I would say to include caregivers in that too.
Okay.
Personally.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'll do that.
Just
do that.
having seen in Rockland, they basically said there are going to be 6 licenses here, and everybody was sort of like, wow, that's a lot. Like, are 6 stores really going to open up in Rockland? And now all 6 licenses have been taken there. So we're kind of seeing that people are prospecting a little bit on that. So that will it'll fill. Yeah.
And that's how our definition includes medical. So I just wanted to clarify that's what you want. So we'll include that. Okay.
Yeah,
I
and
think
Jeremy,
so.
can I just ask a point of clarification here?
Yes, sir.
We're talking about BTH and B1. Is
Yes.
this ordinance not allowing any other districts to have a store, a caregiver store, whatever?
Thank you. Yeah.
I think it's important to address, does somebody want to put, the Subway is up for sale? If you didn't know, or maybe it's been sold, but
The Subway's not for sale. I think it's just the property's for sale.
Building.
The business still.
I get it, but I mean, right? The building's
No,
for sale is what I meant.
I have the same question, Ethan. Like, I'm curious as to, are we intentionally limiting it to just those 2 zones?
Downtown.
And therefore saying we can have 2 businesses in those 2 zones, but we're keeping our option open for B1, B2, B3. Why are we focusing on those 2 business zones?
Right. I mean, the foot traffic argument is a great one. I like that. I agree that businesses love to have people walking by their stores. It just comes to mind, like out by the state park, out by the Camden Hills, the little shack that has the food there or whatever, like that could be a marijuana store out there, or, you
Next
could
to
have,
Hannaford, whatever.
yeah, you could put one right next to Hannaford in one of those stores. So what's the idea on that, Jeremy?
I mean, I guess so. Again, this was Mark's proposal. I was not trying to stray far from what he was proposing, because it is his proposal. It's not a town. The town didn't draft this.
Right.
That's what he's proposing. I think, certainly, Ethan, the coastal residential, which is the little food shack out by the state park, that's coastal residential. So if you want to allow retail out there, it's very different. And I mean, I've got to deal with the non-conforming issue with that restaurant as it is, because I want that takeout restaurant to be able to stay there. They've struggled getting someone in there the last couple of years, but that's a different issue. I think if you want to go up Elm Street and, in the B2 and the B3 and the B4, that, we can do that. I think the real issue here that's going to limit them, and maybe this is sufficient, is to maybe allow them anywhere where retail is allowed. The setback of 500 feet is going to limit a number of them on Elm Street because of the Montessori school on the corner of Union. So if you'd like me to change this to pick up the B4 and the B3 and the B2, I can do that. That's not a problem, but I would just say that that's not Mark's proposal. If the board.
No, I
wants
get
to-
it. That's the question. I just wanted clarification. I'm not necessarily advocating for that. I will just say from my perspective, I don't know how many of you have done due diligence, but certainly you drive up and down Route 1. My feeling is that the ones that are in town retail tend to adhere to a higher standard of presentation and sort of aesthetic. And, you know, I'm not necessarily inclined to expand it outside, but I did want to raise that and then get the board's input on that. Are you done with your presentation, Jeremy, or are we still going?
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I mean, I think I covered everything. The last thing, then maybe we can just continue the conversation, is the application procedure. And he didn't really, I don't think, Mark, you drafted anything other than saying that combined total of 2. And I drafted this along with the town attorney on application procedure in case this gets passed on June, whatever, 13th or whatever the day is, and someone comes into the office, 5 people line up in the office the next day. Who's the 2, right? Who do we process first? And Bill Kelly and I, who's the town attorney, thought that this was adequate. Rather than some communities did lotteries and all this, we felt that, based on, I think, what I'm hearing out in this, the streets from developers or people that are interested in opening shops in town, I'm not getting a lot of pressure for these. And here's someone who's proposed one, but I think we came up with some good language. First come, first served basis. You got to have your complete application. You got to have your sufficient right title. And it's presented personally in hand by the applicant to the code and planning office. First person on that day.
Yeah, I think that's great. Jeremy, can we get Mark's input on that?
Sure.
Yeah, I think, I agree with Jeremy. I think it's a smart thing to do. We were just trying to avoid a situation where, just what Jeremy was referring to, where people are just sort of prospecting. There are these sort of large multi-state operators that have quite a few lawyers and a lot of money, and they'll just, if they hear that there's if there's a license opportunity, they'll just apply.
It's like back when everybody was going on to GoDaddy and registering web domains.
You got it. So they're just like that. They might try to get the license, even though they might never exercise it. They might not have any interest or real. They might not even be serious about Camden at all. And then they've taken a slot that somebody who's a retail person who is here might want. So, but I do agree with Jeremy that.
So you support that
based on our experience.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Ari. I am interested to see who on the board has any questions, discussion, concerns. I will see your hands and go for them. So go ahead, Pat, you're up first.
Mark, you sound like you have your facilities for growing the marijuana in Hope. Mm-hmm. And correct. Is that only facility you use to supply your store?
We also use for our own branded product. That is correct. We also buy some products on the wholesale market for variety. So there are a few other growers and producers in the state that we like their products, and we think that they make their standards. They meet our standards. But the large majority of the products that we sell in our store are branded botany products that are produced at our facility in Hope. That's correct.
Well, what percentage about is it?
Ari, do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, I think it was in the 70 to 75% of what I was going to say actually gets sold is.
How do you do quality control on it?
So everything that it goes into a recreational marijuana store has to be tested by the state. And it's a pretty intense process, and they test, basically it's like they test in batches. So every batch, I think of 4 pounds, you send them a couple of grams worth, a little bit. And they test it for pesticides, heavy metals, mold, and a few other things. And it can't go into the store unless it passes testing.
Do they test potency?
They do.
Yeah, they test for potency as well.
Test the amount of THC that's in it. and CBD. And so we basically submit that, the grower submits it to the state for every batch. So and then when we get approval, there's actually there's a process that every bit of marijuana has to go through on the recreational side. This isn't true of medical, but on the recreational side, when they cut down a plant to harvest it, they have to weigh it. After they've dried it, they have to weigh it again to show how much moisture has left. And then when they actually take the product off the plant, they weigh the sticks that are left over and the products to make sure that nothing is being moved or snuck around. And then they take that, they send it to the state, it's tested. And then just when it moves from the facility, from the grow facility to the store, a special sticker is put on it, and then it's barcoded into the store. And even when it's moved from the storage area in the store up to the counters where it's going to get sold, another barcode is scanned, another sticker is put on it, and it's moved up. So basically through the system that the state has, everything is tracked really quite rigorously.
And I think you guys covered this a lot, but I just wanted to make sure I was understanding correctly. This is the facility you're proposing would also allow for medical marijuana. Is that correct?
That is incorrect.
So yeah,
Oh.
the state basically offers a couple kinds of licenses, and you can't match up, you can't mix them up. So what we're interested in is opening up a recreational marijuana store. So if we were first to come, we got an approval, our store that we would open would be strictly recreational. There's another process for medical as well. And in the way the definitions are done in your ordinance, someone could open a medical store. They would have to go through the planning board process, but that's handled differently from the way the rec is.
And Pat, there is the difference is that you have to have a card. You have to have a state issued card to go into a medical store
Right.
to purchase the marijuana. It's less expensive that way. We are interested in the adult use side primarily because more of the market is going that way. A lot of people don't want to go get a medical card and go through all that. They just want to go to the store. So that's why
it makes
concentrating on
tourists
recreational.
eligible, right? So you just have to show your ID, your state ID, your driver's license or a passport to get into the rec stores.
I would just clarify what Ari said, just correct. Sorry, Ari. Planning board is not required. If someone is going to want to open a retail store or a medical store, they don't have to go to the planning board. It would just be code office issues a permit, allows them to open.
Okay.
Clarify. Unless of course,
Like anybody who
they're
wants
building.
to get a victualer's license
Right,
or
right.
anything else,
Correct.
doesn't come to the planning board.
Yeah.
And the testing of alcohol, right? Like, are they going into breweries? I don't know what they do for breweries, but I think the testing of marijuana is more rigorous.
I think it is too.
It is very rigorous.
Go ahead, Christo.
I just wanted to go back to the district's piece. Because to me, I just think that if we're only looking at 2 licenses, we're sort of constraining it to a very small part of the business district. I mean, the transitional zone, like you've got the school, so there's a lot of that you've got Watershed School, you've got the middle school, so you're not going to get there. But I sort of feel like including at least B3 as part of it just gives more options to someone looking for even just the lease than just being in those 2 zones.
And are you thinking of keeping that cap at 2 still while expanding the zone?
I think 2 is fine. I just think it gives the second person more options of places to find.
Sure. Yeah, I'm curious if that's, I just want to make sure that you're expand the zones, but keep the number at 2 is your sort of suggestion. Okay. Any more discussion?
I think 2 is a good one. Initially when I saw the proposal come through, I was kind of on the fence. I don't know if I didn't feel like it was a type of store that belonged in Camden, basically. I mean, you know, you can go out to Rockland and they've got some great stores out there to, you know, buy stuff if you want. But I mean, if we do limit it to 2, then that's could possibly work.
Mhm. And I think the foot traffic argument was actually quite persuasive for me. You know, the idea that, like, you know, Main Sports downtown Camden, or, you know, let's say, you know, Boynton McKay, they would love to have more people on the streets, Camden Deli, and, you know, all those places that serve food.
All those places where people are munching.
Go ahead. I saw John, and then I'll get to Lucia.
Thank you. I'd like to comment that I think we're being asked, you know, comment on a proposed ordinance addition. And this does not necessarily mean that
John
Mark
froze.
is going to
John,
get surprised that it is being considered as a first come, first serve type of application for something
Absolutely.
that has. I'm supportive of adding 2 shops and adding, you know, that as a category zoning districts is proposed. But I'm just a little nervous that really you are relying on first come, first serve in order to issue those permits.
Yeah, and John, just so you know, John, you did break up a little bit, but I think we got the gist of it. I'll try to rephrase just for everyone else. John was saying that he is generally supportive of 2 shops, generally supportive of adding the district, but that Botany themselves are taking a chance here. They may not be the first come, first served applicants, that sort of thing. And I do think that's fair. I don't think that we can do better. I think they've, you know, Mark has already indicated that he's willing to, that he supports the draft of Jeremy, that sort of the first come title right and interest and you know, everything in hand and delivered in hand, and that's the best that we can do to prevent the prospecting. Of course, it's an open market, and somebody can put a tent out and sleep in front of the town office up until you know, the 2 days before and try to get in there. But I think unless we have a better suggestion, that's the way I think, you know, the way we should handle it. The title right and interest is really the key, because you've got the ordinance, you've got the people who are here saying, we've got a spot, we've already rented a space, or we own the building, we're ready to go. That is required under the ordinance. So I hear you, John, that there is some risk, but it would be a pretty big risk for another place to come running in and do that. And we can't just build an ordinance for one particular business, even as much as we love them. Lucia, I'm going to express an apology that I was mispronouncing your name. It's been sent to me over messaging by our friends. But Lucia, I will get that right, and go ahead, it's your turn.
No, you're good. I'm used to being called everything, but with a difficult name, you just get used to it. Yeah, so I really tried to look at this objectively, and it's not something I expected to come through. And being new to this particular planning board, and also being new to Camden, I've been in the area for 3.5 years. We own a business here. We came to the area because of the perception of Camden, the sort of high-end tourist perception. I do know it's a residential town. I feel very much part of the community, and I've gotten to know quite a few people in the community. But, and believe me, I am all for free market. And I think if, what the state is allowed to be legal is legal. But I'm looking at it from the character and perception of the town. And I have to just express that while Mark and Ari run what looks like a very professional operation in Rockport, the retail shop, I would have to say I'd be concerned that anybody else could come in and not run a necessarily professional retail shop, just like with any other retail. But in this case, I think we're talking about a little bit more here. And I would probably feel the same way about a vape shop opening. I think with two particularly, we could potentially have, one shop in the old Taro store and one shop at Boyd and Kay's across the street. So, we could have two cannabis stores right across the street from each other. And with the limited amount of retail that Camden has, I'm not sure that that is the perception that I would want to see for Camden. But again, all due respect for your shop and for your professionalism. But that's kind of my feeling about this, or my thought is, and especially if there's more, what, where does that lead to, and what is the perception of the town? And that's me as a newbie coming into this.
Right, and thank you, Lucia, for your thoughts. I would just bounce back to first. I don't know. I'm not sure if you've done the visit to the Botany store. Obviously, you got to see the pictures.
Yeah.
This is pretty representative, I think, of what marijuana retail looks like in Maine. People are very aware of the perception of, sort of bringing in sort of a whatever. There are many businesses along in downtown Camden that offer liquor for sale and alcohol for sale. This is essentially the same thing. This is legal. It's not bringing in a bad element. In fact, what you're actually finding is that these shops are bringing in, as mentioned, a lot of foot traffic. So, from my perspective, the idea of like what Camden to me is not a tourist destination. It is, obviously, but it is also a real town where people live.
Sure.
I live here and I'm not a tourist, and I make a salary that is not in the top 1% of the state, and my kid goes to school here, and the applicants' kids go to school here, and we're doing our thing here, and we do benefit from the influx of tourism. And let me tell you, tourists like to be able to go conveniently to a beautiful weed shop and buy some marijuana. That's something that many tourists are looking for. And why send them to Rockland to walk down by the olive oil store down there and the restaurants down there when they could be walking by those stores in Camden? That's my perspective on it. But I recognize that there's this perception that Camden is sort of this pristine sort of, thing. I like to see Camden be a little more natural and normal along the lines of what other towns are doing, and open up the businesses to those opportunities, because I think that if you visited Botany in Rockland and had a conversation with the staff down there, you would find that this is like actually what we need. What we don't need are more shops that sell trinkets to tourists, because these shops run year round and they keep the businesses thriving year round, and those tax dollars coming in, or those economic dollars coming into Camden.
Well, Ethan, can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Chriso.
I just kind of want to pull us back to the town. We approved moving forward with selling marijuana, and that was approved a while ago. So it's not there's a little bit here we're looking at an ordinance and what the letter of the ordinance is, not so much what, I'm with you. I don't want to see another 5 t-shirt shops in downtown Camden. I'd like to see, as the person who did grow up here, I remember where you could buy useful things in downtown Camden, like hardware and a pair of shoes. So, and if 2 stores selling the same thing, we have 2 stores, we have multiple stores that sell the same thing who are across the street from each other, and the better one will survive.
Jeremy, can you take down your screen and get it back up later? Because I want to see people's faces while we're talking.
Sure. Can I just maybe just point out what I was trying to do by keeping this up, or no?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, quick. Yeah. I didn't mean to cut Crystal off either.
No, that was my time, and that sort of.
Okay.
So we just, Jeannie put this together very quickly. It's not perfect. But the purple here is from the library parcel, 500 feet from the library parcel. So this all of downtown, there's French and Braun. Here's Sea Dog. This is Commercial Street running down to the landing. All of that stretch would be prohibited because of the 500-foot setback from the Camden Public Library. This whole stretch on this side of Main Street prohibited for retail. And then, this goes into here, right? In Tannery Lane and all that.
Yeah.
And then this blue, this is all part of B1. But this blue is because it's too close to the Montessori.
The Montessori, yeah.
Right. So this whole stretch of Chestnut and Main Street, or Elm Street, I didn't know Main was considered Main there. Wow. Okay.
And what's the red dots?
And the red dots
middle
is
school.
from
middle school.
Not the middle school, but also there's at this property.
The watershed.
Well, watershed's over on Pearl
here.
Street.
Watershed's here.
It's
This
a
is
private school.
private school right here.
Okay.
So this whole
right on the
stretch-
skateboard. Yeah.
this
Jeannie,
whole
once again, you just never cease
prove
to
the
impress.
I just thought that would be helpful to stack.
Oh, that
Very
is.
helpful.
I agree,
Yeah.
and I
So,
think Chris has
yes.
got a good point there too. So who's up? I'm sorry, I may have missed some because we didn't have the screen up. If anybody had a comment,
Well, just if I can just sort of.
sure.
To me, I just want to go back to the fact of what we're doing is that we agreed as a community a while ago to, and the state law changed to allow this. So we're moving forward. It'll be limited. I just think, our personal preferences on the issue aren't so much at play, I guess is what I'm saying. I mean, as I said, there's plenty of stores that have come and gone in Camden that I wish we had more of or fewer of.
Like, let's get more tarot readers. I definitely could use more of those.
But yeah, so I just thank you, Jeannie, for showing that, because I think it kind of proves the point I was trying to make earlier, that by limiting it to those 2 zones, it just makes it more difficult for a second applicant to even find space, knowing what retail space in Camden is like, sort of to the application part as well. Like, no one's going to sign up for a minimum lease on a Camden retail space without being somewhat of a serious contender. So I just feel like we could add a little bit of room to that.
One thing is that the B3 wasn't under consideration, so you have to go out south on Route 1 further than the dots show now, because I didn't.
Yeah. No, got that,
Right.
Jeannie. Yeah. Yeah. Why couldn't you, Jeannie? You didn't visit the psychic, and then you would have known that we were going to consider that.
I liked her. She was pretty cool.
I'm not knocking it at all. I haven't visited, but I just, it's more the from the store, you should have seen that coming type of thing. But
Yeah, I got it.
So thank you. I mean, everybody's thoughts, I really appreciate that. And Jeannie, the map, I think that clarifies a lot for me. And, I just hope that they're all very upscale and as professional as you all.
I mean, I do think the market's going to drive this.
Yeah.
You know, the real estate prices in town, the availability of locations and the price is going to drive a lot of this.
But
There won't
Lucia,
be a
I know
purple
what
trailer.
you're saying about the town, because I had similar thoughts about that also. But like they're saying, it is legal.
Yeah.
So I
Oh,
guess
yeah.
that to contend with too. And I
Can
mean,
I'd like
it
to-
does help promote any foot traffic. I don't know how much in total, but, you know, would it really pan out? It's hard to say, I guess. But I think that could be a benefit. But, you know, the downtown in general, I think could be benefited by having a lot more useful stores. Like I think we were talking about, or Chriso maybe mentioned that or something. In general, that I think would really be a good diversion.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. And I would just mention again, the idea that for local people, shopping for t-shirts isn't a big deal in the winter.
No, I know, I agree.
But
There's
local
plenty of
people are
certain
going,
types
local
of
people are
stores
going to
in town.
bars and restaurants, and they are frequenting marijuana retail. I see you, Ari, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a couple of things to say. That the first is, you know, I think Mark and I are very sensitive to what you guys are talking about, and you know, one of the reasons that we wanted to make sure that we included a cap on the number of stores for this is because, like I was saying actually to Mark, like I don't want Camden to have 6 weed stores in it. I feel like that would really start to impinge on, you know, the vibe of the place. And I feel like what we have seen throughout the state is that the vast majority, it's very hard to get a recreational license, and it's pretty expensive. And so the vast majority of our competition, while we might not think they're as good as we are, they're pretty swanky, you know, like there's no doubt. And if you go down to Rockland, there are going to be 4 like sort of mainstream recreational stores down there, and they're all really friggin' nice. They really are, like Highbrow and Sweet Dirt and Botany, and then another one is going to open up soon, and they're all very, very high end down there. It's going to be even harder in Camden to open up a store. We previously did some serious research about leasing spaces, and just went and talked to, because really you're talking about mostly Bayview Street, right? We went down and we talked to most of the people who own businesses down there, and most of the people who own buildings. And a lot of them aren't willing to lease to a retail marijuana store either, because they don't want to get involved for whatever reason. So there's a lot of limiting factors, which we support. Like, we think it's good because it also means that we have a better chance of doing it because we're really serious about it. But it also means that there are a lot of limiting factors beyond just that sort of cap on two. But we totally.
That's good insight, Ari. Thanks so much. Go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say also, in terms of, I would agree completely with what Ari said, and also in terms of like foot traffic and the kind of people that some of these nicer stores attract. The average age of our cart, like somebody who comes and checks out, is 48. These are the teachers at the high school and the doctors, and it's you go into Botany and you're going to see all your friends there. So it's not somebody selling weed on the corner. It's a very, very different kind of thing. And I think that I agree with Ari. I think most of the brands that would consider pushing their way into Camden are highly likely to be ones that could compete in this environment, because it's good. You better have an upscale brand, or you might have a problem in this town. I think.
Yeah. It's and the industry's pretty tough right now. So, you're seeing a real contraction. So a lot of those little stores that are sort of not as nice or don't have as good product are really going out of business. They can't compete. And so we're seeing the market really work in that way, to that end.
Is there an age limit of people that can sell?
You have to be 21. Is that
Yeah, you have to be 21.
To purchase
work
and sell,
anywhere.
right?
Yeah.
correct?
You can't walk
Yeah.
in, you cannot step into a store unless you are 21. So you
Yeah, we
can't
And
even,
you
can't
like
even walk in the
show
door.
a physical ID, is that correct, when you walk into a
Right.
store?
Correct.
You have to show physical
And-
ID, which we then scan to make sure it's legit.
Yeah,
And go into our database. Yeah.
yeah.
And
So in many ways, more stringent again than going into a local bar.
For sure.
And you're not even, there's no consumption on premises.
Or
Zero
Walgreens, buy a
consumption
bottle.
and
Yeah,
zero consumption on premises. And as Jeremy mentioned, in terms of like, odor or whatever, those kinds of things, and everything's packaged and prepared by law at our facility that's in Hope and has been delivered ready for the consumer, already sealed and packaged in the retail store.
and nothing can leave the store. Everything that leaves the store has to be in a child-proof container as well. So every jar, every box, every bottle, everything has to leave in a child-proof container. And I was just going to say, like, we're very strict. The state is very strict. I have a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old, and I've owned this business for nearly 2 years, and neither of them have ever been inside it. They've never been able to step inside. They stand outside when I go in to check and see how everybody's doing.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for all those explanations. I was just looking at it from, a perception, because Rockland does have a different character, just like Belfast has a different character than Camden,
Yeah, for sure.
Agreed.
What do you got, Ethan?
I think unless there's other comment, I've got one extra person. John, you're all set down there? You've somehow fell to the bottom of my screen. I go on the phone. So do you have anything to say, John? Or chime in? You're still a little bit glitchy, I guess. Maybe we're not getting the audio.
No, he may want to shut his video off if he wants to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to try that? Shutting off your
Yeah.
video and then see if the
I'll
audio
be
comes-
supportive of moving.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds good. Pat, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay. Lucia?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, and as far as the specifics of the ordinance, I mean, we all feel pretty comfortable with what's being proposed. The distances from the library lot, not just the building, the limit of 2 stores. Do we want to add in B3 as Christo proposed? That's, I guess, the one outstanding question.
We're certainly not opposed to it.
And
Well, can you show a map of B3 again?
you can kind of,
It's
you
the
can kinda-
corridor of Route 1.
It's Route 1, you said, Chriso?
yeah, basically going down to almost to Tomy's, not quite there, up to, down Elm Street.
So it's the
Where the
Rennie's,
other-
if you think of like the Rennie's Plaza and the bank, and then up down to Cedar Grove Motel on the west side, and Quarry Hill, the dentist office, Margot Moore. It's that
Yeah,
stretch of Route 1 heading south.
yeah, but does it include the gas station and the t-shirt shop? Not I'm sorry, the graphic designer?
No,
No, that's Rockport.
That's already into Rockport.
it stops before the subway,
Okay.
and at Quarry Hill.
That's good to know. Thanks
Yeah.
there, Jeannie.
Hannaford is B2.
Okay,
I
yeah,
have it up on my computer. That's why I can.
Oh, I
okay.
know.
So, let's do a vote on that. Again, it's not a formal vote. We don't need a formal motion, but support of the planning board to extend the possible districts to B3. Just show of hands.
I'd be supportive. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And John, I'm sorry, you're at the bottom of my screen. Did you show up too? Yeah. Okay. So that Jeremy, that's our only feedback.
All right, so I'll do the same language that I did for B1 and BTH for B3.
Correct.
If it works for you, we can do that very easily, and I can have that language done tomorrow so that we could get this thing advertised. And if you're ready for a hearing, if you could take a vote.
We'll do that motion, but I want to just make sure we have everything in order. Also, the changing, as you suggested, the language to the medical.
Yeah,
In
I
that
looked
one
at it again. I
section?
don't think it needs to change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then finally, we're making clear that we're limiting to 2 stores regardless of the districts, even though we've expanded the districts.
Mhm.
And then anything outside of those districts not permitted, could be addressed down the road, but not permitted. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's okay with that? Good, all right, we can wrap this up then with a motion from my friends, Chriso or Pat, or anyone else who wants to jump in.
I'll make a motion to move that language amendment forward to a public hearing on the 1st of March at 5 PM.
Jeannie likes you to add in as stated in the agenda.
That's what I said, isn't it?
Not quite, but.
There was a lag. There was a lag.
Oh, I missed it, right, okay, you got that, Jeannie?
As
Yeah.
amended, the language as amended.
As amended and as stated in the agenda and as amended, correct. Okay,
Well, it
roll
was
call
actually
vote.
not included. It was actually not included in the agenda. It was the supplement that I sent you this
Oh.
afternoon.
Supplement, yeah. You got
Oh,
that too, Jeannie?
Yes, we'll straighten that language.
Yeah, thanks. That's the best thing you can do for us. Well, besides the rum cake. All right. I will take a roll call vote. Chriso,
Aye.
Pat,
Aye.
Lucia,
I,
John. Oh, is he on mute? Oh, he's raising a
Yeah,
hand.
phone.
Aye, okay.
Yeah.
And it's an aye from me. That's unanimous from the planning board to send this on for a hearing on March 1st. And I want to thank the applicants, Mark and Ari, for coming out and for the work on the proposal.
Thank you guys
Thank
so
you all
much.
so much. Really
I
appreciate
really
it.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you, Jeremy, for all you do.
Yeah, thanks,
And
Jeremy.
Jeannie,
Thank you
you
for
know
your
how
help,
we feel
Jeremy.
about you.
And
All
Shenley.
right, everybody, take care.
All right,
Have a
thank
good night.
you. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Couple weeks.
Sounds good.
good night.